You probably don't even think about it, but there's a constant battle happening on our screens every single day. It's the Translation Showdown, human experts versus the AI in our pockets. And today we're going to find out who's actually winning.
Look, we all use tools like Google Translate, right? They're super fast, they're convenient, but you've been there. You get a translation back, and something just feels off, a little clunky. So what is really going on under the hood? Is the machine finally catching up to the human brain? Well, that's the big question we're diving into.
Okay, check this out. This right here is the perfect example of the problem. On the left, you've got the human translator. They get the intent, the cultural feel of the phrase. But the machine on the right, it just gives a literal word-for-word translation that sounds super awkward and totally misses the point. And that gap, that's exactly what we're here to explore.
Now, to be fair, modern machine translation, what we call neural machine translation, or NMT, is a huge leap forward from the old days. It's way, way better. But there's still this massive gap when it comes to the real art of language. You know, the nuance, the culture, the context.
So how do we actually measure this gap in an objective way? You can't just say it feels wrong. We need the right tools. For this investigation, we're basically building a digital detectives toolkit, using a technical framework to compare what the machine spits out against a gold standard human translation.
The process itself is actually pretty straightforward. First, you gather the data. We're talking thousands of sentence pairs that have both a human and a machine translation. Second, you clean all that data up and get it ready for analysis. And then third, you run the tests to get the hard numbers.
Our first tool in the kit is called the Blue Score. The easiest way to think about this is as a similarity checker. It basically just counts how many words and short phrases from the machine's translation are an exact match for the human version. So a higher score means more overlap, which is supposed to be better.
And our second tool is TER, which stands for Translation Edit Rate. This one's pretty easy to get. It just calculates how much work a person would have to do to fix the machine's attempt. So with this one, a lower score is what you want. It means fewer mistakes to correct.
Okay, so we've set the stage, we've got our tools ready to go. What did the evidence actually show us? Let's get into the results.
Now this is where it gets really interesting. Look at how clear that gap is. The average BLU score for these advanced machine translations was hanging around 34. But for a translation to be considered publication grade, good enough for a book or a professional website, you need a score over 60. That is a massive difference.
And the data points to this really clear barrier, something we're calling a contextual ceiling. It happens right around the 40-point mark on the blue scale. The machines, because they just rely on statistical patterns, they consistently hit this wall. They just can't seem to break through it because they don't have a real, deep understanding of context.
And that leads us to this fascinating thing called the fluency-accuracy paradox. Basically, the machine can create a sentence that is grammatically perfect. To an algorithm, it looks totally right. But to a human, the meaning is just wrong. The structure's all there, but the soul of the message is just missing.
Okay, so we've seen what the data is telling us, but now let's talk about the why. Why do machines hit this wall so hard? Well, the reasons are really buried deep in the nature of language itself. First thing is what's called structural rigidity. Machines are very literal. They tend to copy the word order and sentence structure from the original language really closely. Humans, though, we're way more flexible. A good translator will completely tear apart and rebuild a sentence to make it sound natural and flow beautifully in the new language.
And then there's word choice. A machine picks a word because, based on all its data, that word is the most statistically probable one to show up next. But a human chooses a word based on the purpose of the conversation, who they're talking to, and the specific context. One is just playing the odds, the other is communicating with intent.
And this is a huge one, cultural competence. A machine has no idea about social norms, inside jokes, or things that are implied but not said. A human translator is also a cultural mediator. They make sure the translation isn't just technically correct, but that it's also appropriate and effective for the people who are going to read it.
So here's the kicker. Those metrics we were talking about, Blue and TR, they are completely blind to all of these essential things. They can't tell you if a translation is culturally insensitive, if it's stylistically a mess, or if it totally misses what the original person was trying to say. All they can do is count matching words on a screen. So, what's the verdict here? Well, the evidence is pretty clear that while neural machine translation is an amazing tool for just getting the basic idea of a text, it's still miles away from real human expertise. And this whole realization is forcing a major rethink in how we even measure translation quality in the first place.
In fact, a lot of experts are now calling things like blue and TR zombie metrics. I love that term. They're alive, they're still walking around and being used, but they're basically brain dead. They can't grasp the one thing that matters most in all of language, meaning.
And all of this has led to a whole new generation of metrics, like one called Comet. See, the old way just matched words. If a human translator used a synonym, say quick instead of fast, the score would actually go down. It was punished. But the new way uses AI to understand the meaning, the semantics. It checks if the meaning is the same, even if the words are totally different.
And this is the new gold standard. It's a complete paradigm shift. We are moving away from a world of simple, dumb text comparison and into a world of sophisticated semantic understanding. It's about checking for equivalent meaning, not just equivalent words.
Which of course leaves us with this final, really fascinating question to chew on. As our AI gets better and better at actually understanding and communicating true meaning, that line between human and machine is just going to keep getting blurrier. So what then becomes the unique, the irreplaceable role of the human translator? That's definitely something to think about.